So today we should finish, no, not finish, but continue our quest to understand what is finance and where does value get its value from. So last time, if you remember briefly, what we were talking about at the end was the problem of suppose that I have some textbook and essentially so imagine there is a current market price, and to me the value of having it purely based on its economic uh, utility for me is below the market price, so I wouldn't want to buy it. But if I can resell it after at the same market price, then of course the net price for me is zero, so then it's useful to do that. So then the question was, what can change the anticipation of the agents? And as we can see, the anticipation of the agents being able to resell their book is based on on very little information. And as soon as their framework changes, so for instance, if the professor says, "Oh, I'm going to change the textbook in the future," then they can immediately lose faith in their ability to resell the book, and the market price would drop because otherwise the demand would fall to zero. There was some very good question that came after the class, which was the following. So imagine that it is known that the professor say changes textbook every 5 years. So do students think, oh well, then I'm never. So is it over? Is there no hope for students to ever want to buy the textbook? Well, there is some hope in the scenario in which there is uncertainty. So you just have to think, okay, uh, the teacher may change the textbook next year, or maybe he's going to use it again for another year, so I can resell it. And if the likelihood of you being able to resell the book is high enough, then that's good enough to have a market actually that works with people anticipating that they can resell. So the probability that you're not going to be able to resell the book oh, is you have to include things such as risk in the decision, but more or less you could think of it as some depreciation. So at playing the same role as having the book losing part of its quality. So if there is like 10% chance I can't resell it, then it's a bit like if my book had lost 10% value after 1 year, for instance, of using it. But so the crazy thing is to imagine that if the professor instead says, I'm going to use the textbook for 100 years, and then after 100 years, there is no chance that I'm going to sell it, then you could imagine thinking ahead and thinking, oh, okay, the last generation in 100 years will not want to buy the textbook, and then the previous generation will not, and then so on and so forth until you reach your generation. So that's a very strange paradox to think about. Anyways, I'm not going to further into this path because we don't care about textbook. We care about money in itself, but as we were saying, the logic is similar. So yeah, just as a reminder, so what we were saying is, so in the old times, how would old people be able to consume? Well, they would have some children and hope that they maintain good relations with their children, so that they want to take care of them when they're old, or otherwise they would just have to hope for charity from younger generation. But then in more recent times, we have had systems of public pensions and private savings and private pensions. But these are all based on the faith that the system works. So in terms of public pensions or even private pensions, sometimes it's systems that we call pay-as-you-go, meaning that the current generation contributes just enough to make sure that they can repay for the amount that the old generation asks to be paid back from, because they have contributed while they were alive. So it works very well when there is many young people who work and they contribute and they're productive, and there are not too many old people and they don't live too long. So in that case, then the contributions to the pension don't need to be too high. But if things turn out the way they are turning out in most countries, well, it looks like you don't have as many young people as we used to have. That's what we just saw in the last part of the class. And old people can live for until maybe from the 60 when they retire to 80 years old, 85, 90. So that's the system is that's let's put it mildly, it's putting a lot of stress on the system, because it means that young people have to pay a lot to pay back for the pensions of the old people, and that's why in many public pension systems and private pension systems, yeah, so people are starting to believe that maybe it's a bubble that's not going to be able to be paid back. All right, and in terms of money, well, if I just save money in my mattress, then the assumption is that this money is still going to have some value when I retire, but it's an assumption, so we have to justify it. Yeah, and so in all cases, the scheme is the young generation produces good that is consumed by the old population, and they hope that the next young generation will pay to them the way that they pay to the current old generation. But that's not sure. So here is the model. I spoke briefly about it. Yeah, so we have discrete time periods. People live for 2 periods, could be 3. I think Samuelson considers 3, but it's not required. And we have the coexistence of 2 generations per period. So the generation that is born today and the generation that was born the last period, which means maybe roughly 30 or 40 years ago. Okay, so here we were. So now we are going to have 2 goods, quote unquote, in this model. So first of all is just one good that is a consumption good and an investment good or any good. But there is one very important particularity of that good is that it is fully perishable, meaning when the period finishes, then it just disappears. So it means that there is absolutely no reason for any person who possesses that good to save it for the future, because it just has a value of 0. So it's exactly like if so in I think it didn't work out very well, but I've came across this scheme for some of the recent books I wanted to borrow at the library. So they don't want to have a physical copy, but they say, oh, we can loan you a digital copy, but it's encrypted, and as soon as the loan finishes, so it may be like 1 month or 1 year, or I don't know how long I borrow it, then the copy is destroyed. So because obviously what they want is me not to be able to keep the book in PDF on my computer and then share it with everybody else on the internet. So that's exactly the same scheme, is that it would be like if I had textbook that expired and that lost all their value. So there is the only value of the goods is purely an economic value. So no speculative value. I don't have to think about reselling that good. Okay, and yeah, so consumption, so production at time S is going to be labeled omega ts. Omega t is for the generation that was born in time t, and s is when do they consume. So they could consume at time t, omega t of t, or they could consume at time t plus 1, so omega t of t plus 1, when they are old. Yeah, so that's production, but yeah, consumption is CT, which would be CT of t or CT of t plus 1, so they could consume when they're young or consume when they are old. And then, but so that's just a general setup of the model, but we don't need production all the time. So for our story to make sense, what we're saying is that only the young produce, and then when the old retire, then they cannot choose to work, they automatically produce 0. So we have that, yeah, so production of the young is omega t of t is equal to omega. And when they are old, so it's production omega t of t plus 1, which is equal to 0. So here I could say, well, it's clear. I don't have to add anything. Yeah, goods are, yeah, and goods are a pure economic asset. We don't need to hold it. It doesn't, it's not worth it. And they are not speculative assets, so they cannot be sold back. So now let's consider, again, you stop me anytime there's a question. Let's look at the population. So population at time t is going to be L of t. So L meaning labor. So what we care about is basically the output that the labor output that people can have. So that's why we label it, we call it L. And it's the population at time t. And note the following. So L is the total population, so of the 2 overlapping generations, so of the people who are born currently and the people who were born last period. So that's the whole population. And we see that it grows at a constant exogenous rate n. So LT is equal to 1 plus n, the rate of growth of population, times LT minus 1, the population that was there before. But here I haven't said anything about how many kids one generation has. I just said, oh, that's the general growth rate of the whole population is n. But it is very easy to just infer from this that people have, so for every one individual in one generation has exactly 1 plus n children. How do we do that? Well, that's normally I would do it on the board, but here it's simpler just to write it this way. So I can write that, so this is LT equals to 1 plus n times LT minus 1. So it's like population today equals to 1 plus n times population yesterday. And the population of today is PT minus 1, the people born yesterday, plus PT, the people born today, which is equal to 1 plus n times the same thing yesterday. So PT minus 2 plus PT minus 1. And then imagine that I don't know how many kids people have. So let me just postulate that they have m children. So what can I do? Well, I can just say the following. So PT, the population today, born today, is exactly the population that was born yesterday multiplied by the rate or the average number of children that each and every individual has. So PT minus 1 times 1 plus m. And I can do that the same thing on the other side. So I can replace PT minus 1 by PT minus 2 times 1 plus m. So it gives me PT minus 1. And then look what I can do. I can just put PT minus 2 in front of the parenthesis here, and get PT minus 2 times 1 plus 1 minus m. So PT minus 2 times 2 plus m, 1 minus m, 1 plus m. and get PD minus 2 times 2 plus m, and then same thing here. If I can just substitute multiply everything by PT minus 1, so I get PT minus 1 times 2 plus m. And you see that the factor 2 plus m is the same on each side, so I can just cancel them and get that PT minus 1 equals to 1 plus n times PT minus 2. And I also know that by assumption, PT minus 1 equals 1 plus m times PT minus 2. So I deduce that 1 plus m has to equals 1 plus n. So m equals n. So yeah, here don't. So it may look confusing. You might think, oh, where does that 1 plus m come from there? So imagine that there's a gap there. So it's two different lines that don't have a lot to do with each other, but of course they do. All right, so is that clear? Stop me if you have any questions. Usually that's the hard part is the initial moment where we just set everything up and we show how things are evolving and how we define everything. So then you have to keep all this information in your head. So don't worry, you're going to get accustomed to it. Okay, so in this setup, so here I just have a consumption good. So can somebody tell me what's going to happen? So it's not super complicated. All I'm asking is how every generation is going to, how much are they going to consume if we have the following settings. So they produce, when they're young, they produce omega, and when they're old, they produce 0, and the goods are fully perishable. So how much are they going to consume when they're young? How much are they going to consume when they're old? So yeah, try your luck, try your best guess, and then we can work things out from there.
PTW over PT omega plus PT minus 1 omega.
Is it good if is your answer linked to this slide, for instance?
Yes.
Okay, so say it again. Oh yeah, by the way, so PT is
population.
Yeah, but so this I just introduced this to. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Okay, all right. So yeah, PT times. You say omega t, not or omega. Say it again.
Yes, the same, because it's equal, so it's the same.
Yeah. So when they're young, you're saying they consume omega?
No. I'm saying that everybody will consume the same, which I think is equal to omega over total population. No, omega
okay,
times active population over total population.
Okay, I see your answer. So okay, okay, it's true, of course, that the total consumption each period will be the total production each period. So it's perfectly right. So how much is going to be produced each period? Well, it's PT, the young generation, multiplied by omega. So how is it going to be distributed though? So remember that, so imagine there's no altruism in this economy. Yeah, that's something I should have said. So there's no altruism, people just care about themselves.
people are going to consume omega over 2 each time for each period. They are going to consume half of their production for each period.
You have a very generous mindset. It's good, but you don't have an economic mindset. Economists just think, oh no, everybody just cares about themselves and they don't want to share. So yeah, so it's a very counterintuitive thing. So both answer, you have in mind what happens in real life. So in real life, of course, young people produce, but they produce more than what they consume themselves, so that the old people can consume. So why is this not going to be the case here? Well, because if I'm young, and here I have some children, but they don't care about me when I'm old. So they just care about themselves. So then what happens is I would like to say I'm young. What I would like to say is to go see an old person right now and tell them, okay, I have more production than I need to consume. So let me lend you some consumption good. And then hopefully when I'm old, so in one period later, then that person is not there anymore, but there is one new young person that's there, and go see that young person and tell that person the same thing, right? Because I cannot hoard anything because the consumption goods disappear. But what is going on? Well, there is what we call the contracting problem. So the contracting problem is I cannot go to see an old person right now and make a contract with them. Tell them, oh, please receive my goods right now, and then tell the next young person to give me back the good I gave you, so that I don't starve when I'm old. Why can we not do that? Well, because there is no way for me to contract with somebody who's not born yet. And anyways, that person who's old right now, they're not going to be around. So in a sense, what the contracting problem is, I don't have any valuable asset to trade. So then the result is there is no reason for a young person to agree to give anything to an old person, because they're not going to be around forever. And they know that anyways, nobody's going to give them anything when they're old. So it's a super selfish world. Obviously, that's not what happens in real life. We're going to see why. Yeah, but right now, if there's only perishable good, then that's the only thing that can happen. Yeah. So yeah, the thing is, they can't sign a contract with somebody who's not born yet. So being selfish, they say, "Oh, I'm just going to consume everything I produce right now, get maybe fat a bit and get very rich, but then I'm going to die young because I cannot live in old age because I cannot consume." So what is the solution to this very dramatic and sad situation?
A system of pensions?
Okay, yes, but so simpler than that. So imagine there's no system, but yeah. But that's perfectly right. Okay, another suggestion then.
Another suggestion would be to give goods to old people so they can make money from.
They can what?
Can consume.
Yes, but why would I do that? If I'm young and I know that they. Okay, I might be generous, but imagine I'm not.
That could be a state to a rule or something to make Young give all some goods.
Yes, so we're getting somewhere, exactly. So it's the same set of ideas as a pension system, basically a rule that says that if you contribute to the system, then when you're old, you can receive from the system. But I have something very simple in mind. Okay, maybe it's too obvious. Maybe you're thinking too hard about complicated stuff. So what is the problem here? The problem is yeah, that the good is fully perishable. So that's the problem. So if you have a long-term system, it means in a sense that you keep track of the fact that you contributed to the system. So what is the easiest way to keep track of the work or the things that somebody has given to other people? It's money. So that's just the solution. The solution is inventing money. And what is money? Well, contrary to the good, it has absolutely no economic value in itself, because I cannot plant money in my garden to have vegetable. I cannot eat money. The only value it has is the prospective value that I can get from exchanging it from some other good. Yeah, so we see that it's a purely speculative asset, in the sense that the only thing that I care about is what I anticipate I'm going to get from it, but I cannot know for sure. And then what is the scheme? Well, the scheme is, of course, that the old people of this generation of today give money to the young generation, and then the young generation exchange that money for some good that the old can consume. And then when the old are good, or the young become old in turn, then they do the same. So they have this money accumulated, and then they tell to the young people, oh, that's how we do things here, that's our scheme. But a pension scheme would be the same. A pension scheme would be, oh, you give me some of your goods, but in a pension system, it would be, oh, there is this person who has given that amount, so when they retire, they're entitled to receive a certain payment per year, for instance. So it's a bit the same. It's money is the most basic way to keep track of what people have produced or given to other people in the past, so that other people can say, okay, that's right, I agree to give you back some of the goods today. Yeah, so it's a speculative bubble because in a way it doesn't have a fundamental value, and it's based on faith. So it's so today, as a young person, I agree to receive money because I trust that the system is going to go on, because I trust that the money is not going to crash, its value is not going to crash to zero in 10 years. Why do I trust that? Well, I may have some reason, but it's not sure. And in some countries, it can actually crash. Exactly. So is it a purely speculative bubble or not? So do some people have some idea of, so why should I trust that money is going to keep its value when I retire? That's some basic questions that economists have started asking themselves long ago.
You don't. There's only the common interest in it, but as soon as someone starts distrusting the system, the whole thing starts to collapse. So there's nothing really holding it up.
Yes, and the thing is, it's so it's extremely interesting. So most of the rest of the class, we have seen things that are concrete in the sense that, yeah, you have some production function and you can convert some input to some output, and it's, you know, it's tangible. Here, what we have to realize is that since we have a purely speculative asset, then it has to be based on a common knowledge and common trust and anticipation and social norms and laws and everything. And you cannot know for sure if these are going to be maintained. And as we are going to see in the end of the class, then it's yeah, in some episode it has not been maintained. So to follow up on the last answer, so do you still trust that the euro is going to still have some value, say in 30 years? Or if we don't trust that, then what should we do?
Buy gold, invest in gold, which is
Yes, exactly. So before having the current monetary systems we have with floating exchange rates, we had the gold standard. So, and the trust was that written in the national law is this: you can exchange this piece of paper at the central bank for a certain amount of gold that's stored in there. So you can, at some point, take all your money with you and go to the government and say, oh, I want my bag of gold, please. And what is nice with the bag of gold is that you know that, or you trust that some people are going to want your gold, because it's very useful in electronics. It's and people like to have jewelry with gold because it shines. So that's so you can trust that, yeah, even if the world collapses at some point, if you have some gold around, so you might find somebody who's going to want to keep it. I want to maintain that there is some worth to having some system of some money, to keep some money. Yeah, two of them, and maybe three. So first of all, it's the law that you have to pay your taxes in euros. So it would be nice if you said, oh, I produce trinkets, and now if there is if I have to pay taxes, then I'm going to pay the government in trinkets. But then they're going to say, no, if you did produce something, we don't care what it is, but you pay us in euros. So it means that at some way, if there is anybody who's working in France, then when it's time to pay their taxes, they're going to want euros. So maybe I can find someone who needs euros to pay their taxes. The other, of course, is just the general trust. So you trust that other people trust the euro because they don't really think about the risk that it's going to lose all its value. So, but this is in a sense based on everything else, right? And the other thing is that while some shops may say something like, "Oh, we don't accept credit card for this type of transaction," or "We don't accept checks or something." So they more or less have to accept the money. It's the legal tender is the most liquid asset you can own. So you can more or less know that it's going to always be accepted if you go to buy something. You don't have the burden of asking yourself, maybe that person is not going to want it or not. And what's funny is that, so there is this thing you might have heard about, Bitcoin. And yeah, here is Satoshi Nakamoto was saying that yes, it's possible that people shouldn't trust national currencies because they may be debased. So he says the root problem with conventional currencies is that all the trust that's required to make it work, the central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, and history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. Well, yes, he's right. But the thing is Bitcoin a good alternative for that? So do people trust it more than they trust, or do people accept it more than they accept national currencies? Well, in many Bitcoin conferences, people want to pay to enter the conference in Bitcoin, but they say, no, we don't accept Bitcoin. So it's not a good start if you don't even accept the Bitcoin to finance your own conference. And you may have known that yeah, Bitcoin is quite a bit more volatile than other currencies. So here's the value of so how much you can get in terms of Bitcoin or US dollar in exchange for €1. And as you can see, the exchange rate between the euro and the US dollar is pretty stable over time. Whereas for Bitcoin, it's really all over the place. So it was quite low when it started, but then it grew exponentially, and then whoops, people said, oh, maybe it's too high, so I don't trust that it's worth that much. So then it went back down, and then back up, and then back down. So what type of Bitcoin what type of asset would Bitcoin be? Just to see if you follow along. Does it have an economic value or speculative value?
Well, Bitcoin is built. Wait, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can talk.
Oh, okay. So Bitcoin is well, it's based on blockchain, so that's why people are trying to make it into a thing, a global exchange currency, because it's built on precedent. So it isn't really. It's even more abstract than money right now. Before 1971, but well, after 1971, but it's I'd say it's even more speculative than money right now. But it's built on favors done by blockchain, which are basically electronic interactions.
So would any of you care to invest in some Bitcoin, or do some of you invest in Bitcoin, or you don't trust it?
I don't trust it.
Yeah, you don't trust it. Well, I used to think that. So before last year, I was really skeptical, and I thought to myself, so your answer is perfectly right. It's entirely speculative. And by the way, so imagine the following. Imagine if I invented Bitcoin and I decided to award myself half of the Bitcoin in circulation when it started. So now, for every Bitcoin I have, I can have tons and tons and tons of euros with it, especially if I go back to 2018. So that's just crazy to imagine. It's you can't exchange it for anything. It's just some information on the ledger. Yeah, that's okay. There's a sophisticated system to make it work in a decentralized way, but yeah, it's just some bits, as in the name Bitcoin. And yet, so imagine it's a bit like if I go back to the previous scheme there. So imagine that some generation of young people say, oh, you guys, you have some reserve of old euros or maybe francs, for instance, but we decide to print our own currency right now. So we're just not going to give you any money. and we're going to use our own currency to award ourselves this new currency that we just made up out of thin air, and then in the next period, then we give that new currency to the young generation. So it means that today we can consume Omega, we can consume all what we produce, and then later on we receive part of what the young generation has. So what's preventing us from doing that? You know, we could in principle do it. Of course, the problem is if we do that once, then who's to say that the next young generation is not going to do the same and we get to starve? So there's a trust, the capital of trust that's accumulated with the old currency that you shouldn't breach, otherwise it's a risk for the future. But if you think about Bitcoin, the people who did start with Bitcoin, they got extremely rich. So then lots of other people said, oh, let me invent my own cryptocurrency and become rich. But then somehow people don't trust that the thousands and thousands of new cryptocurrencies are worth anything, as rightfully so. But still the Bitcoin, it looks as it's going to keep its value. And then, so I just said, I used to think that it was, it could crash any day and it wouldn't go on forever. But now here's my take on it. So it's a personal take. Nobody has told that anywhere. But here's what I think. I think that some tech enthusiasts and programmer and people who are the ones who develop the program, they think they're geniuses. So they think, oh yeah, it's so amazing that the blockchain technology and the ledger and the hash rate and all these way we can make sure that it's secure and the transaction works, that of course is going to replace all the national currency eventually. So then if I'm somebody from outside, I'm an economist, I know that they're wrong. They have a misconceived idea of money, because money is not, the Bitcoin is not going to keep its value because there's a fixed number of Bitcoin emitted and you cannot overprint money. No, if everybody decides that Bitcoin has a value of 0, then I'm afraid, but even if you have 100 Bitcoins, they're worth 0 because everything else has decided that they're worth 0. So it's a convention. But I know that these tech enthusiasts exist and they don't believe it. They think that their program is just amazing. So I know that if I own some Bitcoin, then with some luck, I can find some tech enthusiast Bitcoin who wants to buy my Bitcoin. And the fact that I can trust that I'm going to find that person means that I trust there is value, and that other people can trust that I trust it, and that other people can trust it, and eventually it just keeps its value over time. It's a bit like the story of the taxes. Yeah, so taxes, is it a huge reason? Oh yeah, you need some money to pay your taxes. So it's not such a big deal, you know. It's yeah, you pay taxes once a year, and would you like imagine that that's all there is to it? But no, but the thing is that you don't need a huge reason to believe it. You just have to have faith that, yeah, it's possible it's going to keep its value. So then it's good enough for everybody to believe it. But yeah, it's intangible in a way. And if people did lose faith in Bitcoin, then it could crash to 0 for sure. All right. Oh yeah, and one thing, of course, is if you are in some countries that currently have a hard time with their currencies, then it might be good actually to own Bitcoin instead of owning your own currency. So I know that there's the COVID crisis going on, and American elections, and very important things. But still, do some of you keep track of the news in the world and know which countries are having problems with their currencies and inflation right now. So two countries.
Iran?
Iran? Oh, I didn't know that. Yes. Why is it? Why do they have a? Maybe it's true. I just don't know.
I don't know it for a fact, but there. I mean, it's if you have an embargo from the U.S. and you're trying to keep to keep yourself afloat, the people usually turn towards other currencies or crypto.
Ah, okay, nice. Yeah, okay. Good example. I haven't thought of that.
Is it Turkey?
Turkey?
Yeah.
Okay, man. I don't know everything that's happening in all the countries. Yeah, maybe with the pressure of France. What was the last answer?
Venezuela?
Yes. Right now, it's just it's going. Things are very hard in Venezuela right now. So that's of course it started with the crash in oil prices that precipitated the crash in the Venezuelan economy and all the political problems they are having right now. So we're going to talk more about this situation in the next class, but yes.
Oh, do you want to know a fun fact about what happened in Venezuela with the cryptocurrencies and so on? And
Yeah, go ahead.
Money? Do you know the game RuneScape?
No.
Okay, so I'm sure people know it's a game, and in the game you have your own game currency. Well, people were making money playing that game and giving other people items and actually getting food for their family through playing the game, which is a good sign of the national currency situation.
Yeah, that's more solid. If you believe that you can play the game and exchange it for some real value, then of course you store your value in that instead of storing it in your national currency. Yeah, so quickly the other answer is Zimbabwe. So they had a difficult time with farming in the last year, and now inflation this year is quite bad. Again, we're going to talk about their situation. It's not the first time that this is happening. But in both cases, if I was there and I had the phone, then I would think, okay, maybe Bitcoin is better than the national currency. All right, so let's continue and finish the model. So what time is it? Yeah, so it's finished at 5. All right, so we have time. So I hope to do the quiz before the end. All right, so I've heard that, so the econ student have seen this model before. So just a 2-period intertemporal consumption choice model. Have you seen it? Say yes, say no. Law students or math students? No? Or yes, say it in the chat or...
No.
Okay,
No.
if you say no, it's okay. We're not going to get to the the quiz then, because it's yeah. So this is very useful to see as a model. So okay, let's not go too quickly, and let's focus on the important part. So I'm going to skip the more formal description of the model and skip to a part that's easier to grasp. Yeah, that makes my life more complicated, because obviously the other group, they have seen it already, so it's easy for them. Okay, but don't worry, you're smart people, so you can follow along. So the preferences are these preferences. So we say they're intertemporal preferences, and what we want is to maximize them. So we're not maximizes utility right now, or this time t, we consume as to maximize the whole utility of our lifetime. And how, what is our intertemporal utility? Well, it's consumption, utility from consumption right now. So U is a small u here, is the utility I get right now from consuming. So I get U of Ct from the consumption at time t, plus I get some utility from consuming stuff in the next period, in the future. So it's U of Ct t plus 1, so what I'm going to consume next year, or not next year, but in 30 years, for instance. But what we say is that people have some discount rate, beta, which is between 0 and 1. Usually we say it's something like 0.99, so it's almost 1, but not exactly 1. And what does that reflect? Well, it reflects the fact that people have some impatience about consumption. So if I give you the choice of consuming one chocolate today and consuming the same chocolate 1 year from now, then you have just, you care about yourself in the future, but it's not some other guy down the line. It's far away. I know I like chocolate now, so let's consume it now. So that's what we're saying. So over and above the risk of not having the chocolate, or the inflation, or the interest rate, or anything, there's just this preference that makes me want to have stuff right now. So that's why we weigh the weight on the current consumption, and the utility I get from it is a bit higher than the weight on future utility. And by the way, it's difficult to estimate beta, and it might differ. And so economists sometimes they think, oh, we should estimate the value of beta, because imagine we have to make choices such as, you know, how much should we invest to reduce climate change? Well, if beta is, say, 0.5 annually, then should we invest a lot to reduce climate change? Then not at all, because it means that people care a great deal about their current consumption. And then next year, they care just half. And then the year after, it's the UCT plus 2 times beta squared, and then beta to the 3 and the 4th. So imagine in 100 years, we don't care at all about consumption. Of course, we don't think that, and we may even think that for big choices, such as weighting current and future society's utility, we should consider beta equal 1. So we should say it has the same importance. But so that's a big debate. So right now, the best thing for you is to think it's between, it's something like 0.99. And it's for you personally. So that's beta. And then the utility has its usual shape. So U prime of C is larger than 0, meaning if I consume 1 unit more of consumption good C, then I'm happier. But it's got decreasing returns. So the more I consume, then the more I'm satiated, and I don't want to consume anymore, or I still want to consume more because U prime of C is always bigger than 0, but I get less and less utility from it. So obviously that means that I'm not going to choose to consume everything today and nothing tomorrow, because at some point, if I were to transfer one small unit of C from today to tomorrow, then I would be so much happier tomorrow, and it wouldn't really affect my utility today, since I have already so much. So because of this assumption, I know that I'm going to try to weigh to balance my the utility I get from each consumption each period. And so, yeah, one function we can think about is log of C simply. If I take the log of C as U of C, then and I take the exponential, then I would get exponential of log of U of C plus beta log of U of C plus 1. log of C+1, yeah, so it would be exactly as if I had cut Douglas preferences. But that's just some mathematics. It's not useful. Okay. And by the way, we call these preferences exponential preferences because so the utility is discounted by beta for period 1, by beta squared for period 2, by beta cube for period 3, etc. So it's exponential basically. Okay, so this is consumption. Now we're going to we have, as always, an intertemporal budget constraint. So here it is. Yeah, so now a young individual can save for future consumption because what he can do is exchange part of omega, its consumption right now, to some money MT, and then in the future use that money accumulated to consume CT+1, right? Yeah, so instead of consuming CT equals omega, then he can consume a bit less and get some money MT. And there is going to be an exchange rate between omega and MT, which is simply the price. So P is how much I receive in terms of M when I give up one value of omega. And for now, there is, or ever actually, there is no bank in this model, so no interest on savings. So I save M and I receive back M next period. So in period T, what I can get is, so this is in terms of prices, or in terms of in nominal terms, meaning in terms of MT. So what do I produce in total? I produce omega because I'm young, and I receive, I can see I choose to sell all my production. So how much money would I get from that? I will get PT omega. And then how much money so what can I do with that? Well, I can spend this income towards consumption by paying PT and receiving a consumption CT. So I consume, I consume exactly in the same unit as I produce. But then I can also get some money. And we write that it's smaller or equal because who knows, maybe I'm stupid and I choose to throw away some of my income or some of my consumption. But we can already anticipate what's going to happen is we like consuming because we have this assumption that U prime of C is always positive. So it means that we're going to saturate our constraint. So we're never going to have to care about the possibility where this is smaller. So we are going to just always, this is going to be equal. So anything that I produce, I either save or consume. All right. And then next period, what do I get? Well, I have the money I just saved, no interest on anything. And then if I want to buy some consumption good to consume next period, it's CT T+1, and I have to pay the prices tomorrow or next period, so PT+1. All right. So just with that, it's enough. I'm just going to go very quickly over these two, but you don't have to really care too much about it. Just know why do we introduce this? Because I have to make sure that I die without debt. Because obviously I could have a Ponzi scheme in which I just consume all the time, and I just tell to people who loan me money, oh, I don't give you money back. But I cannot do that here because I cannot loan money, and the max I can have is the money I actually saved. And nobody's going to give me more than the value I have saved. So that means that in total, so imagine what would be the limit of the consumption in period 1 would be to consume all that I got and just consume CT equals omega. So this is just saying that you are limited by your total production. And this is a consequence of the first one. So, but don't worry too much about these. These are the two important ones. Yeah, so the total maximization program, I don't want to, yeah, this, if you've not seen the model, this is just a very formal way of treating the problem. So it's, yeah, it's, if I can write it as a 3 choice variable problem with the 4 constraints, the 4 constraints I had here, and the 3 choice variables are CT, CT+1, and MT. But of course, the thing is, I can use the constraints to get rid of many of these choice variables. And yeah, so this maybe math people know about Karush-Kuhn-Tucker. They're smart people, but in economics, it's much better to understand what's going on than to use these conditions. So we shouldn't worry too much about them. So as I was saying, the constraints are saturated, so we can replace the smaller or equal with equal signs. And what we can do is actually eliminate MT from the equation. So we can eliminate MT from our choice set by simply taking PT times omega minus CT equals to PT plus 1 CT times CT of at T plus 1 by basically replacing MT in both cases. And we can get this, this equation, which is the equation that we usually use in intertemporal. So maybe if you had seen it, that's the first version of the equation you have seen. So what this says here is that the total consumption, or actually the total spending in first period, PT-CTT, plus spending in the second period, PT plus 1, CT T plus 1, has to be equal to the total income, which is just PT omega. If I had some income in the second period, then it would be something like PT omega T plus PT plus 1 omega T plus 1. If I still had omega T plus 1, no, I don't. So it's a very simple. So that's the way to think about it. All right. Yeah, so let's manipulate a bit again. So one thing that we can say is we have prices here, PT and PT plus 1 and PT. So we can get rid of prices in the following way. So what we do is we divide by PT everywhere. So we had PT, we divide by PT, this is 1. We have PT, we divide by PT, this is 1. And here we had PT plus 1 in front of CT plus 1. So we just divide by PT and we replace PT plus 1 divided by PT by 1 plus pi t. And 1 plus, where pi t is going to be the inflation rate. So this is going to reflect, yeah, I don't know if I could compute. I've not. Let me see if I can do it. So P T plus 1, oops, divided by PT equals 1 plus pi t. So what I can do is, yeah, then well, it's actually quite simple. So let me put this 1 plus pi t over there and subtract 1. So pi t equals to this minus 1. And then this is like having minus PT divided by PT. So what I get is pt plus 1 minus pt. Divided by pt. So this is the rate of growth of prices over time. So between period t and t plus 1. So pt plus 1 minus pt divided by pt. So that's what we call the inflation rate. So yeah, so if it's many new notions that you may have heard about or not. So stop me if it's going fast. I'm going as fast as I can, but to still explaining everything because yeah, we have to keep up with the other group. Yeah. So then, yeah. So the last, as I said, the last constraint was redundant. So yeah, this is the simplest way to express the problem. So here you have 2 choice variables instead of 3. So max, so you choose Ct at time t, Ct at time t plus 1 to maximize your utility, subject to this intertemporal constraint that we just, the budgetary constraint that we just highlighted here, and this feasibility constraint, the fact that you can just exchange the amount of money that you could collect at most, which is omega pt. So you cannot consume more than your needs. And then we have 3 potential solutions. 10 minutes left. All right. 3 potential solutions. So one interior solution in which, so by interior solution, I mean, every time I say interior solution, it means that all the quantities that I could that could be consumed or produced, for instance, are non-zero. So I'm not constrained by having some quantity that cannot be negative, for instance. So here it means that both consumptions at Ct and Ct plus 1 are bigger than 0. But then that's in opposition to corner solutions. So corner solutions would be solutions in which I would like to just consume everything today or just consume everything tomorrow. Okay, I've been talking for a while. So do somebody have, so here I'm saying I'm only interested in 2 cases. So which of the 3 cases, or which 2 of the 3 cases do I think are more interesting to consider?
The 2 first cases?
Is that so? Yes, it's so. And why don't I care about the last one?
Because it wasn't written below.
Oh, okay, but imagine that you don't know what's coming. So is there a logical reason why I wouldn't care about this third one there? So this is just, it's not some math feature of the model, it's just some common sense thing.
Because people are impatient. They want to consume today more than.
Yes. Okay, yes, but so we have to think about inflation as well. But so it's good to think in those terms. But yeah, so some more basic reason.
Because if we suppose that the inflation is positive, we will consume less in T plus 1 that what we would consume in T if we.
Oh, it's very good. But again, the thing about this this model is still care about consuming in both periods because yeah, because of this feature here. That yeah, because of the decreasing returns to consumption. So if I consume everything tomorrow, then I would maybe like to consume a bit less tomorrow and more now, because now the marginal value of consumption would be very high. Think logically.
Could it be because if we had a negative inflation, then we would have a consumption that would be higher than omega? And then it wouldn't respect the constraint?
So no. Well, it's so this is we can consume anything that's between 0 and omega in period 1. So 0 is part of the set of values that are admissible for the model.
Because if you don't consume at time t, you would die.
Yes. Good. Yes, that's just that's the only reason why we. So this one doesn't make too much more sense, in the sense that we would, try to not consume everything tomorrow, today, and die before we reach old age. But this would make even less sense if we imagine that you need to consume some positive amount today to not die and be able to enjoy consumption tomorrow. So that's the only reason really why we're not going to consider that. All right, so this is the model. This is a graphical representation of what's going on. And I think we won't have time for we won't have time for the quiz. Unfortunately, we will do it next time. Yeah, so this looks like any other micrographic you have seen, but it's the things that are on both axes are changed. But the reasoning is the same. So let me start with the intertemporal budget constraint. So this is my budget constraint. So start with the blue one. So why is there a negative slope? Do somebody have an idea? So this shows me the consumption possibilities. Yeah, I should be more precise. So this shows me the consumption possibilities between this period and the next. So it's exactly like consumption possibilities between good 1 and good 2. It's just that now I have substituted good 1 and good 2 for consumption today and consumption tomorrow. And instead of having some budget constraint that restricts the choices I can have of consumption of good 1, if I choose some consumption of good 2 or the reverse, then here I have some limits into how much I can choose to consume tomorrow if I consume today. So first question, why would this have a negative slope? So this is the intertemporal budget constraint.
Because the more you consume at time t, the less you consume the next period.
Yes, perfect. If I choose to increase my consumption today, then I can save a smaller amount of money M. Then it means that next period I have smaller amount of money M to exchange for consumption CT T plus 1. All right. So, and how do we explain this? So why is inflation rate pi t at the denominator here?
Can you repeat, please?
Okay, so I'm just asking why, what's pi_t doing there? So, okay, yeah. So as we can see, the total consumption I can consume at most today is omega. I cannot consume more, because then it would mean that tomorrow I would have to consume a negative amount of consumption, but I cannot consume a negative amount of consumption. So this is you see that this number there, that's exactly this second constraint, that my consumption today, CTT, is between 0 and omega. So that's the most I can consume. And then tomorrow, it's not omega, it's omega divided by 1 plus pi_t. So why do I have that?
Because if the inflation rate is high, then with the money, with the amount of money we have, we buy we buy less the amount of CT plus 1.
Yes, exactly. So, so that's exactly right. Here, it's in real terms. CT is the amount of real stuff I can consume. And to obtain that, I have to buy it on the market. So of course, if its price is very high, then it means that I have, imagine that my omega is 1,000 euros. Then if the price to get it is very high, then it means that the amount of CT I can get for that is very small. So omega, not omega, sorry, pi_t here plays exactly the same role as the price of good 2 played in the consumption choice model. We had it was m divided by p2. So, and the more the price of good 2 was high, the less the amount of good 2 I could buy. Then here is the same thing. It's just that this is consumption. This is inflation. And yeah, so that's about it. And then, so yeah, so usually when we have a Cohn-Douglas production function, or not production function, utility function, then we get an interior solution like this. So a Cohn-Douglas would be, for instance, if U of CT was like log CT, for instance. So we would have an interior solution all the time. But here we allow for the possibility that my indifference curves are this shape, and they can actually go to 0 there. So and when would that be? Well, you see that if, for instance, inflation is super high, then it looks like I could reach a point in which I think that prices are so high that tomorrow, that basically it doesn't matter. I shouldn't keep anything. I should just consume everything today and starve tomorrow. Because anyways, even if I try to save a lot, it doesn't matter. I will lose almost all of it. So that would be the case, for instance, if I'm in Venezuela right now, and I know that the inflation is so high that all my savings are going to be gone tomorrow. Well, let's just, oops, sorry. Let's just consume everything right now and not care about the future, because I know that I'm going to be bankrupt anyways. And yeah, the other corner solution would be there, but we don't have to consider it. Okay, so I think we can stop here, and then next time we can. Actually, you know what? I think so. I have some notes on microeconomics on intertemporal choices in French. And for people who are not familiar with this, I think it would be very actually useful for you to go through them, especially if English doesn't help you to understand everything that's going on. So I'm going to post them on the website so you can read it, and next time be ready for the rest of the class. Oh, there was some question here. Okay, yeah, so the so answer is so should can we go over the Easter Island? So let me think about it. But probably it would be useful, yes. Thing is, I already did it with you guys actually, and the other group no. But the problem is you were not, it was not everybody was there because it was just after the exam. So kind of already had it, but I agree that it's a lot of material. So I'll think about it. But yeah, if you think it's useful, then definitely we could have one. So I tried to put everything in the videos. So you have the videos and the handout and the slides. And I'll even put up some review material, so auto-evaluation for chapter 2 too. But yeah, it might be good to go over it. So all right, let's finish here and continue next time.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay.
And Mr.
Yes.
Do you have corrected already the problem set?
I'm waiting for one of my TD, and I'm not telling you whom because I don't want to accuse anybody. But he said it should be done by maybe Monday. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so thanks everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.